Now, hello, this is Harry Watt of North Carolina State University Wood Products Extension. I'm with John Harmon of the Tennessee Highway Patrol. He is a special projects officer with a long history and is extremely qualified to talk about what are the regulations and concerns for moving logs and firewood on our highways. John, welcome.
Well, thank you, and thank you for allowing the Tennessee Highway Patrol to be part of this Zoom meeting and getting that information out to your listeners and your viewers.
Well, in past workshops, when we've had the Highway Patrol, the state police, it's always been one of the most popular sessions we have, and there's always lots of questions. So you'll have to think about what do they need to know, and I'm going to let you just go.
Okay. Well, of course, in the state of Tennessee, I've been teaching these classes since 1997, and you're very correct. Everybody wants to know from the Highway Patrol. They want to keep from getting that ticket. and our philosophy is, and I'm sure it's the same. I know some commercial vehicle officers from around the country and in North Carolina. You know, if we can prevent that logger or that person hauling that lumber, firewood, logs to market, if we can prevent them from getting a ticket, we can prevent them from having a crash or injury.
Well, tell us about what are some of the regulations that everybody needs to know.
Well, I can only speak for Tennessee law and, of course, federal law under the 49 CFR. They pretty much mirror what I understand throughout the country. State law will mirror the federal law. But number one thing in Tennessee is and in federal law that goes all the way to California and all 50 states, Canada, and Mexico, is anything over 4-foot overhang has to have a red flag or an orange flag adequate off the overhang of their load. Okay, so anytime, at all times, if you've got overhang over 4-foot overhang, you're required a red or an orange flag at all times. Okay, and when lights are required, they're required a steady burning red lamp also. Now, some states require the yellow flashing light, but some states don't. But the red light is when lights are required, and it can be a pretty day when you leave and you get halfway to the mill. If you run into a rainstorm, you're required to have lights on. You're required to have a steady burning light. Now, in my opinion, that is the logging industry's liability starts when they get on the roadway. And I teach the troopers, if you catch a log truck that they don't have an adequate red or orange flag to stop them, place them out of service, and make them get a red flag. With the distractions that we have now in these cars, people aren't paying attention, and that's your livelihood. Have a good flag. And in Tennessee, I've encouraged the industry to over-comply. Put 2 flags on. You've over-complied to be safe, but it does no good to have 2 bad flags on there. Well, so I'm a big advocate of that flags.
Well, I do see sometimes flags that break off and they're laying on the side of the road, so having a backup, that makes sense.
Yes, sir. And there's no excuse for not having a good flag, because all the mills that I'm aware of in Tennessee will sell you a flag at the scale house for $5 or $6. So there's no excuse not to have a good flag on the end of the load. And that can be a major factor in the investigation of a crash. And who wakes us up every morning? A lawyer. You turn on the TV. Have you been hit by a truck lately? Call me. Who puts us to bed every night? A lawyer. If you don't have adequate safety equipment, they're going to, if you're involved in a crash, they're going to use that against you.
I believe it's your opinion that logs are probably the most challenged object that goes down the highway.
They are. The logging industry has the biggest challenges getting their commodity to market, with the bark flying off and things of that nature, and the equipment coming in and out of the woods takes a beating. So the logging industry has some challenges. They do. But if they'll just keep good flags on their loads, if they'll, as a general rule in Tennessee, it's 75 feet from the front bumper to the rear of the load, okay? So they're required to be within the length law, okay? And if they'll just keep good brake lights and turn signals, have a good flag and a good light on the end of their load, and if they'll slow down, as a general rule, I see them operate about 3 loads a day in my area, you know, and it's, you know, we could stop them every day, but that's not what we're trying to do. We just got to keep them honest.
What about
But the community sees them every day running up and down the road. And when you unload your logs, it wouldn't take just a few minutes to kick the bark off the trailer, because when you leave the mill, all that bark winds up on somebody's hood and on the side of the road. And that makes the community not want to appreciate the logging industry like they should.
Okay. What about the height? Are there some height standards for trucks and highways?
13 foot 6 inches. That's as high as they can be. Okay. I call them an eyelash. They'll put a log up there and they'll have that little eyelash up there, that little bark that's sticking up above the log. That counts. And I'm not afraid to climb up on top of there and measure it.
Well, I would say somebody like yourself is pretty savvy. You've done it enough. You know what to look for. What sort of brake requirements do trucks have and trailers hauling wood and logs?
Well, the brakes, they need to adjust those brakes. I mean, as a general rule in Tennessee, we're going to give you a 10% tolerance on top of the 80,000 pounds if you have a 5-axle truck. And you need to be within that tolerance. No, don't abuse your tolerances, okay? Because you can be held criminally liable for that if you continue to abuse your tolerances for weight if you're involved in a crash. But if companies would just take once a week and adjust those brakes on their truck and trailer, they'd be good. But so many companies don't understand how important that is. I've watched a family lose their livelihood, and they had a great company, but they lost everything they had worked hard for over the years in a crash because they failed to do the little things, adjust their brakes, keep brake lights and turn signals going.
What about in the firewood delivery business? A lot of people have like single axle and tandem axle dump trailers, you know, that might hold 1 or 2 cords. What kind of brakes are required on those?
If it's a being pulled by a F-350 pickup truck, or all trailers are required brakes on it if they're not in a farm use, okay? And logging is not a farm use, okay? The logging industry gets many exemptions as a farmer for taxes, but not in safety, okay? They're in the logging industry. It's a commercial enterprise, okay? Brakes on trailers, anything that's over, and this is national, it's a federal law, and I'm sure it's adopted by the states also. Anything over 1,500 pounds is required brakes on 1 axle. So if you've got a car trailer or a dump trailer, and the gross vehicle weight of that trailer is going to be over 1,500 pounds, it's required brakes on 1 axle with an emergency breakaway device. If the trailer is over 3,000 pounds, it's required brakes on all axles.
Well, that's
and
good.
Emergency breakaway device.
Yeah, well, I would assume a new purchased trailer would have that, but a lot of people would, use traditional trailers, like you say, that maybe were farm trailers at one time and they don't have brakes, so they're in violation.
They can be, and even if you buy a brand new trailer, the trailer market is so competitive. People will drive 100 miles to save $100 on a trailer. We're all trying to get the cheapest trailer. In the trailer market, they are interested in selling you a trailer. They're not interested in selling you what you're going to haul on that trailer. Okay. I'll give you an example. They'll sell you a trailer with one axle brakes on it, but once you put a car on top of it, it's required two brakes with two axles. Okay, brakes on two axles because it's over 3,000 pounds. They didn't know you was going to put a car on it, even though it was a car trailer. So they're interested in selling the trailer, not they get out of it because they don't know how you're going to use the trailer.
Okay. Well, I assume the Highway Patrol and the DMV or whoever regulates in each state has some educational materials. How can people find out about the rules and regulations?
And I know each state has those. They have safety education officers. If you're needing information, the industry is starving. Society is starving for information. They want to comply, but it's so hard to find out the rules sometimes. If stop a trooper at some point in time, I would recommend that you only stop a state trooper, a commercial vehicle trooper for those answers. You can ask the sheriff's department or the police department. Odds are they're not going to know the correct answers. Okay. Contact that local trooper in your area. Go by a scale house or call the scale house or the commercial vehicle unit within that state, and they'll guide you in the right direction.
Well, what else do we need to know about hauling logs and firewood around?
Well, if the logging industry, we could talk about this subject for 8 hours, because there's so many regulations that we deal with and tolerances and things of that nature. So it's a discussion that can continue more than 15 or 20 minutes. But I would encourage the industry to invite a trooper to a community meeting and have a little powwow with them, like I do with the Tennessee Forestry Association. We meet, they'll have a master loggers meeting, and they invite those troopers, and then they have a discussion, and then they do sidebars. These troopers are willing to give you information to prevent you from having a crash or get a ticket.
All right. Well, John, we greatly appreciate you being here and helping us out. We know you have a busy schedule. You're looking for everybody on the road, not just loggers and firewood people. But thank you very much.
Well, again, thank you for the invitation for the Tennessee Highway Patrol to be part of your program. And the number one thing I think is so important is if they'll keep those brake lights and turn signals in good red or orange flags on the end of their loads, and the law requires one, put two on it. You're doing all you can to prevent somebody from running into the rear of your load.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. And this is the 2021 National Firewood Workshop with a focus on Tennessee. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Be safe and buckle up.